Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Meet the Author. Today, I have Samantha Young. Samantha, thank you so much for jumping on with me and talking today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, obviously, if people couldn't catch on to the accent, I always like to start these interviews, with the icebreaker question. But I have to know first, have you ever been to the States?
I have several times, yeah. I've been
Okay,
to a few different. I'm counting them off my bucket list.
amazing. I love that. What's one of your favorite things to eat? Because I feel like the cuisine is very different, like in the States versus, in the UK. What's one of your favorite things when you come over here to eat? It's an easy
Oh my
icebreaker.
god.
Could be anything. You can't have a wrong answer here.
It sounds like very like boring, but really burgers. Like I'm a burger girl and you guys have perfected the burger. I had a burger in Boston that I still dream about.
That's amazing, especially because when I think of burgers, I don't think I would necessarily think of Boston.
I know. I know.
I feel like
But
they're more like
seriously,
the
the
clam chowder,
best.
like versus like what they're known for.
It was so good.
I love that. I love that. Honestly, if I ever leave on a trip and I come home, like that's what I want. I want a
Yeah.
good burger.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
definitely.
Well, thank you so much again for jumping on today. For anyone who maybe this is like their first introduction to you, they're like, "Oh, this is something I'm interested in." They're just stumbling upon this maybe on YouTube or Spotify. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, who you are and kind of how you got into writing.
Okay. Well, I'm Samantha Young, and if the accent is a giveaway, I'm from Scotland. And I've been writing for 15 years, full-time author for 15 years, which is crazy. And I write mostly romance across a couple of subgenres and reading levels. I've been published in 31 countries, so I've gotten to travel, North America, Europe, Australia, to meet my readers. So yeah, it's been a wonderful 15 years in publishing, even if it's went in the blink of an eye.
That's awesome that you've got to travel to so many different
Yeah,
places.
it has. It's been great. It's been so good.
I feel like too, like I don't even know how, if that would experience because I feel like some different countries, maybe they like publish your book if it's like a different language. Like, is it in the different language or is it still like how does that work when you're traveling to different places? Like, do you then have like an interpreter? Just people like, how I'm just curious how like that goes since you've been so many different places.
They are published in the language of the country,
Mhm.
and what really makes me feel like I should be doing more is how many people speak English. Especially across Europe, like it's a lot of people's second language. But there's always like my publisher there to translate with readers who don't speak English. And I've been to a couple of like book fairs, and there is something kind of torturous about being in a room filled with thousands of books you cannot read.
And I bet they're beautiful too. And you're just like, I want to know everything. I want to know all your secrets, and I can't.
Definitely.
That's so cool though. That's so unique that you like get to have that experience. So many people don't like can't say, that they've been to so many different countries and their books are published in so many different languages. Like I love that. I think that's just so unique.
Yeah, it's been one of the best parts of the publishing journey. It really has.
What's like kind of what got you into, writing? I know so many people have different stories. Some people studied English at university, some people, were moms or, they just decided one day, like, hey, I've always had stories in my head and I want to kind of put it to paper now. Kind of what got you into writing?
I've always been a writer, because I've always been a reader, and I started writing at a very young age. But into professional writing, I wrote a book when I should have been writing a dissertation at university. So I graduated from uni, and I had this book I'd written, and I was struggling to get work. I had to move in with my mum and dad. I just was going to interview after interview, but it was a really bad time in the UK economy. And so I'd self-published my first book through a printer. And then I discovered Amazon's self-publishing, and I published my first book after doing some research and teaching myself marketing and design and all of that. I published my first book with Amazon in February 2011.
That's crazy, that you
Yeah.
again, that it's like, such a long career that you've been able to do this, and you kind of found a passion, it seems like, that you were able
Yeah.
to run with from there on. And obviously you have a ton of books behind you now. It's just, you're able to make a whole career at it again. It's such a amazing career that you got to travel to so many different places. What does it mean to you now, that you're so far in and you've seen and experienced all this stuff? You just had a new book coming out, a new series, that you just keep getting to do all these different things, create new worlds, or even in the same world, that it's like this book, next generation type of situation.
Yeah.
What does that mean that readers just keep coming back and they just want more and more and more?
It's astounding because that was the one thing when I first got my agent, she asked me, "What is it you want from this career, Sam?" And I said, "Longevity. I just want to be able to do this for as long as possible, hopefully for the rest of my life, touch wood." So I mean, it's a hustle and it's hard work, but when you love what you do, you don't mind the hard work. And so just to be able to keep doing this is like, I'm just really grateful. I'm really, really grateful to readers for continuing to come back and read more, and for recommending, because that's how you get new readers, is the current readers telling everybody else to read it.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. Obviously, again, you just had a new book come out, on Love Rose Lane, new start to a new series. But it's like familiar faces for some, kind of next generation.
Yeah.
Tell me what that was like, writing this new series. Did you always know that you wanted to go in and do, kind of the kids, after next generation, or was it just because the other one, was doing so well that you're like, hey, maybe I can take this, in a new direction? What was that process like, deciding to do kind of the
Yeah.
next steps?
It was actually it was difficult because this is the next generation to a series that is my best-selling series. It was the series I hit number one in the US with. It's the series I got my agent, my publisher, the translations, and I finished it in 2015, so 10 years between. And I just felt like there was too much pressure, that I didn't want to like write something that didn't live up to it for the fans of the series. But it was actually author Catherine Cowles, who's a good buddy of mine, and
I
she
love
read
her.
on Dublin. I know, she's amazing, and she read the series before we even met. And she was like, "When are you giving us Next Generation, Sam?" And I remember having a discussion with her, like, "Oh, I don't know. Do you really think people will want that? Do you really think there'll be an audience for it?" And she pretty much encouraged me and supported me to go ahead and write the next book for the next generation. So
I love that. I'll have to tell her thank you. I love Catherine. She's literally such just a little sunshine, I feel like, in
she
the publishing
is.
industry and just like the book world in general. But
Yeah.
now I have something to say. Hey, thanks for this. We all appreciate you for the nice little push.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you then? It's been 10 years, going back into kind of that mindset, that world again, and revisiting some of these characters. Was it fun for you? It's to kind of like be like, oh my gosh, I'm back, but it's different, obviously, because it's not like, where I left it. 10 years have passed. Obviously, this is the next generation. Was it like coming home in a sense, or was it still a little more nerve wracking, like when you finally started it?
It was honestly so much easier than I thought it was going to be. I think a lot of not wanting to sit down and do it was like the fear that I wouldn't be able to find because each of my series has a distinctive vibe to it. And I was like, what if I don't find that thing? And it was just surprising how quickly that I found that place. It was like coming home, but it was also fun because things have changed in reader expectation for the romance genre. So it was fun to like come to it, but have like a fresher take.
That's so cool. What is your like writing process like? I'm just curious. This is such a different answer. I feel like every time I ask an author, like, from start to finish, when you found, you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna revisit this series kind of situation. What was that like process? Okay, like starting it to obviously now like your book is out there, walk me through that process of getting to that point and from it's in your head to now, it's out there in the world.
I am a plotter. I wish I was a pantser because it would be so much faster. But I have to like first kind of like figure out who the characters are and let them just sit in my head for a while. And I'll create a book playlist for that book. and I will listen to that and let that kind of like little scenes start playing out in my head, and then I'll sit down and I'll start like I will figure out where they're going, where they start, where they're going, where I want them to be by the end of it. And then I write very like short chapter summaries before I sit down to write the book, just so I have a guide
Mhm.
about, it keeps me right. Sometimes I veer off those chapter summaries if the characters start doing something different and it feels right. But I always like to just have that guide as I get into the book. But yeah, it's changed over time. I used to be much more like I used to handwrite like very full chapter summaries before starting the book, but the more you write, the more experience you get. It kind of streamlines the process a little bit over time.
I love that you said, and I feel like I so many authors say the same thing, but how you said like if your characters start to, veer off and do something different,
Yeah,
kind of just again walk me through that, because I obviously am a reader, I'm not an author, but I think it's so fascinating how many times authors tell me that they're like, hey, I had
yeah.
this plot, I had this, scenario, this situation, and my characters took me somewhere else. Like, what is that feeling like, when you're obviously you're the ones writing these characters, but I feel like they do really kind of direct the story for you.
100%. And I think it's all to do with like, at first, when you start, you have an idea of who they are. But as you start to write, you really start to become them and get to know them. And you start to realize you might have had them wrong, the way that you might have, someone that you've just met. And you get to know them and you start to realize they're maybe a little bit different from how you first perceived them to be. And so that's kind of what happens, is that you're just getting to know them better, and where they're taking you is where they should be going. And there's sometimes where they take you down a path that's completely derailing the story. So
You're
you're
like,
like, no, I need to rein you in a little bit. But it just depends.
you're like, come back. We don't. I know you want to go there, but then I have to. We back here, and I don't want to do that, so I have to
Yeah.
go back this way.
Yeah. I have a plot to think about, okay?
This is for me, not for you. You
Yeah.
technically you live in my head, so you have to come back over here.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Where do you feel like you're most comfortable when you're writing? Are you someone that likes to write at home? Maybe, you mentioned earlier that you don't like to stay up really late. So are you more like, okay, I'm super productive first thing in the morning at home? I know some people like can't work from home. I've interviewed, they have to like be at coffee shops, they have to like book hotels, like just to be away, from their house.
Yeah.
What is like your peak, okay, I can work really well. I'm content right here kind of place?
It's definitely my office. I just like to know that I'm going to have, so many hours of uninterrupted time to just write. And I get so distracted by other things going on. Like I've tried to write in the airport and on the plane. I can maybe write in a hotel room. I've done that before. But I like to be surrounded by my things and the things that comfort me, especially books. There's something just being surrounded by books that really just makes me feel cozied in and ready to write. But I again, I've completely changed. When I first started writing, I was 24, and I would write in the wee hours of the morning because that's when everybody was asleep. So, but now the thought of even trying to write at that time, because I like to get up first thing, coffee, sit down and just start writing while my brain is like awake. And I will write until about 1, 2 in the afternoon, and then the rest of the day is for marketing and admin and all of that stuff.
I like that you have, a schedule that you can keep to, especially I feel like some people that aren't necessarily like as involved in this industry, and they don't understand, they're like, okay, people are full-time authors. What does that mean? It's like, you're not just sitting at home every single day and
Yeah.
just writing. You have so many other things to think about and emails to respond to and to talk to your agent and to, again, even talk about your books online, that's so huge. I feel like even in the last, 5 to 10 years is now all of a sudden it's not enough to just be an author. You have
Yeah.
to market yourself and you have to post about your book and you have to engage with all these people, and it's like
Yeah.
it's nice, but at the same time I feel like it definitely still adds that layer of pressure to you.
Oh, definitely. That more so than anything is the hat wearing, like social media management. So I do my own graphics as well. So content creation, ads, Facebook ads, Amazon ads, all of that stuff, like you can get people to help you, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's still on you, whether you're directing people or you're doing it yourself. And it is a hustle. This business is absolutely a hustle if you're doing it full time. And for me, it depends on your personality type, but for me, I need to have a routine so that I can get it all done.
I feel like I would have to be the same way, because if I have too many hands and too many different things, I'm like bound to drop something, bound to forget something, and so I would have a very strict schedule. Would be like, no, okay, it's time to do this, because I would be so lost.
Me too. Totally.
I don't know how, honestly, you guys do it. Like, every time I talk to someone, I'm just like more in awe of authors. I'm just like, you guys get all the credit. You deserve all the good things. I don't know how you do it.
I email myself all the time. Like my inbox is just filled with me going, remember to do that, remember to do
That's so smart, honestly.
that.
That's so brilliant. I love that. That's like, you've been in this industry long enough when you're like, that's literally brilliant. I love that. So I know you mentioned like you make your like graphics and stuff for social media and things. So like book covers, do you make those yourself as well, or do you have someone that does that, or like what's that process for you, with your books?
Some of my covers I've done, but mostly I work because I'm traditionally published. The self-published book covers, I work with artists, mostly with Hong Lee, who's done most of my covers over the years, and we have a really great relationship because I have like a strong artistic I'm really into art. I was at school as well. I can just tell her what I'm thinking in quite a lot of detail, and even send her some images and she comes back to me and voila. Like she's created what I had in my head, which is just amazing. So that is a very it's very smooth relationship with the covers, and it's all comes down to what I want. With traditional publishers, I've been very lucky with mine. They definitely take into account how I feel about the artwork, and will tweak it if I feel like there's something not quite working to the market, or just in general. But that ultimately is the publisher's decision. So with foreign covers, my foreign publishers will send me the covers and ask me if I'm happy with them. And I more often than not say yes, because I do not know what their market is like. So I have to trust that they know what's best for their market. But yeah, that's how I tend to. It's been touch wood pretty easy process with the covers, because I have great people working with me.
It sounds like that. And again, I wouldn't even think, when you're putting something out in other places, like, okay, would my cover still do well there? Maybe something else would, be better marketed. That's, and it makes sense, honestly, like, especially, someone who, there's so many people out there that like to collect like a bunch of different editions. And they're always like, why are they so different in different places? But exactly that, it's marketed to the specific place, where they're at, because that's what's going to do well there. And I wouldn't even, think of that, but that honestly makes so sense. And it's honestly so cool that you have so many people that you can trust, that you write the story, you bring this to life, but then they elevate it to the next level with those covers.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to give a shout out to my German publisher in particular, because they do the kind of sprayed edges ones, and that's just like the general cover, and that you can go into the store and get, and they're just, oh my god, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, that's so pretty. I love that. I feel like the US is like trying to play catch up right now. Like, I've seen so many people posting, Germany and other places, that they've always had these beautiful books, beautiful sprayed edges. And now the US is trying to catch up, per se.
Yeah.
But a lot of our like sprayed edges now is it's just like solid yellow or like solid green. I'm like, okay, I like it. Like, I'm happy at least with the color. We're including color now, but like, can we do something else? Can we try a little harder? Some of these colors too, I'm like, this is like the worst shade of green you could have picked. There's got to be something better out there. At least they're trying, I guess. They're trying to play catch up. But I've seen so many like editions that I'm like, those are stunning.
Yeah.
They're doing it way better over there.
Oh, I had to buy the French edition of Fourth Wing because it's just that pretty. Can't read French, but I had to have it on my shelf.
Maybe one day, maybe a little bit later on, that'll be something that we all do, is like we'll have all editions, and then like when we retire one day, we'll pick up all these other languages just so we can go read our favorite books
I know,
and actually
seriously.
enjoy them in the language that we taught them in.
Yes, 100%. My goodness.
That's so
Oh.
funny. That's so funny. Well, with this specific, obviously new release, for anyone who's like, okay, I love your vibes, you seem like a great time. Explain it to people, what can they expect going in? Obviously, this is the first book of a new series. If you had to summarize it in like 2 sentences or less, what could people expect? I know that's like you wrote a whole book. You're like,
Difficult.
asking you to summarize the whole book in 2 sentences or less. Okay, you can go a little bit longer, but if you had to summarize it to give someone kind of, what can they expect with this journey, what would you say?
I would say that it's a sexy, funny, banter-filled book with an emotional side. That it's sports romance, it's neighbours to lovers, it's sports proximity, it's second chance, it's grumpy sunshine, fake dating. I have thrown so many tropes at this book um, that just naturally came about. When I wrote the trope list after, I was like, oh. But it is, it's just, I feel like it just has everything. Like it has that really light fun side to it, but it also has the more emotional side to it. So it's got good layers. I think it's got something for everyone, no matter what mood you're in.
I 100% agree. Like the banter, obviously, it's got the enemies to lovers aspect, especially because it's like, everything that happened and now they're older situation. But I think like the anxiety representation too in this book was done so well. I commend
Thank
you
you.
for that, just for people who do struggle with that. I have anxiety and it's sometimes it's like just, you can't explain it. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that like it just comes out of nowhere, and having people that understand that and like it's written in a way that like makes you feel seen. I really love that aspect of it too, and I love that you
Thank you.
included those different layers in the book.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of people have written to me about the anxiety part and how it made them feel seen. And I wrote that from my own experience, which I think, people can tell because it is a hard thing to describe to people. So yeah, I do. I think it's got a little bit of something for everyone.
100%. What is, that kind of process like you just kind of said, you kind of wrote from your own experience. Do you often feel like it's easier sometimes with like your stories to maybe include little pieces of yourself, or, now that you're so far in, to your journey, that you try not to like as often, like kind of explain that to me? Because I know some authors that are like, oh no, I want my characters to be like nothing like me. I don't want to put anything about myself in there. I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to write like me. And then other people are like, oh no, like I dealt with this and I like wanted to include that in like my character's story. What is that kind of line like for you?
I think for me it just depends on the story I want to tell, and the characters I want to explore. Sometimes it is a character that is going through something that I've been through, or someone I love has been through, and other times I want to explore a character that's very different from me, and try to get inside their head, and because I think empathy is such like a big part of what we get from reading, and I want that to be in my books. I want people to be able to read a character that's totally not like them and it gives them a different perspective, and then I want them to find something so relatable in a character that it means something to them. So yeah, it just depends for me.
I know I'm about to ask you a really hard question, and I'm fully acknowledging that. Do you have a character that was either just like so easy for you to write, or that you just like related to so much that if you had to like pick a favorite out of your characters,
My
like,
favorite child.
no, that's why I said I'm about to ask you such a hard question. Literally every time I ask that, authors are like, "You want me to pick my children?" That's why I like to include like now, like maybe one was just like super easy to write. Some people are like, writing this character was like the hardest thing I ever did because they were so challenging for me. But then on the flip side, they're like, this character was like, I literally just like opened my eyes and they just like fell on the page kind of
Yeah.
situation.
I mean, I have a few of those, but I think the character that always will stick out for me is Joss from On Dublin Street. So from the very first book that Unlovers Lane is a spin-off from, and it's the main character's mum is Joss. And I wrote Joss, she was my first contemporary romance heroine. And I just thought if I was going to do this, I was going to write from my own experiences, to a certain extent. And so she was still dealing with grief, and she had walls up, a barrier up, and this handsome Scotsman comes along and, you know, helps break down those barriers and just kind of gets her to start living again and stop being afraid to have connections. But she actually had panic attacks and anxiety as well, which is kind of the connection between her and Beth. So that was just the first time I'd explored a character that had so much going on in her life that was very, very relatable to me. And it was weird because it made it easy to write, but it was also like a really emotional book to write because of it. It sounds cheesy, but it was like therapy for me writing that book and writing that character.
You're not the first person that's ever said something like that. So, I've had people that have said, again, it's like one of the most challenging, but like the most rewarding or like therapeutic situation, that they never knew that they needed to put it on page until like it was done. And then it was just like a sense of relief, like when they got to do that.
Definitely, 100%.
I feel like that's, again, a career that it's so amazing that you're able to do that, and it's healing for you. But then also, like I said, especially with, this one with Beth's story and everything, it was just something that I was able to connect to too. And so it's like, it's healing for you, and it helps, you in a lot of ways, but you don't even realize the impact that you're going to have with so many other people, that they're going to read that and they're going to have those connections, and then they're going to feel better, too, because they got to see themselves, or, situation or something that all of a sudden they have more peace. And so I just know that it's got to warm your heart and stuff like that, that it's helping not only you, but other people.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I, of course, want to keep doing this. And, you know, all of the stuff that comes with that, the data, the sales, all of that. But I always come away from a release with the messages that have been sent. That's what keeps me going and just makes me feel really lucky to be doing what I do. And not to get like too serious, but like, you know, romance can have a stigma to it in the literary sense. And I just think these people who are snobby about romance don't realize that, like any piece of creativity and art and entertainment, it's worth its weight in gold for the escapism and the connections that it creates for people, you know. And that's honestly what keeps me going and keeps me doing the job. That response from readers means more to me than anything.
No, I think you said that perfectly. So many people judge from the outside, and they don't realize, that these characters in these romance stories sometimes are struggling with something that other people struggle, or they have to deal with a loss, or, it's ways that readers are able to connect. And it's not just a romance story, it's something that maybe that person needed to read right at that time, right? That situation. Maybe it's a romance book about someone getting out of, another situation that someone needed to hear. And so I love how you put that there shouldn't be, a stigma of, oh, it's a romance book. Like, it has so many other things besides that in it that's so.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. Sorry if you can hear little pitter patters. My dogs are in the office with me and they're just like wandering around.
I'm pretty sure when I interviewed Catherine, actually, that she had her dog behind her the whole time. Like, was so well behaved. You just wanted to be there for the vibes. But I've had plenty of dogs that have been, since I've been doing this, that have been either in the background or they show up on camera, and I always welcome the pets.
Good.
I love the little pitter patters. I was thinking, okay, she either has dogs or cats, like, that are walking around, but I love it. I'm never gonna be like, oh my gosh, why are there animals?
They're kind of like, can you open the door now, Mom, and let us out?
Mom, you locked us in here. Let us go. Well, we'll start to wrap this up so they can, be released from their prison soon. Is there anything that I didn't, ask today, didn't talk about today, that maybe you want to mention or just, say to readers? Obviously now that new release, type situation, I know it's always like a good time for readers to try to connect with you.
I think the main thing is that although this is a next generation book, I really worked hard to write it so that anybody new coming to it would feel like they weren't missing out on anything, they weren't lost, they weren't playing catch up, that it feels like a brand new, fresh series for a new audience as well. Because I don't want people to think, oh, I have to go back and read this entire series before I can pick up Beth and Callan's book. Because time is of essence for a lot of people, you know. So you can definitely just pick this one up and read without any problem.
Is there any details yet on next book 2 that we could maybe discuss, talk about, get people excited for?
I can say it's Lily's book. That was Beth's pseudo cousin. The cover reveal is next month, the blurb and cover reveal, and it has a touch of a royal romance to it. So
Ooh, I will be keeping my eyes peeled for that. You'll just see me refreshing every single day. All right, Chuck, be like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? All right. That's so exciting. Yay. I can't wait. That got me like, I'm hyped up.
good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm excited for this one. It was so fun to write.
I love that. And I love that. I feel like don't know how. I feel like that process is so hard too. It's like you just had a book come out, but then you're already like prepping for the next one, and like timelines, I would get really confused. But I'm really happy that as an author, you're able to keep it all straight.
Kind of.
Well, thank you so much again for chatting with me today. Before we go, is there like a best place, someone again who they're like, okay, I want to read this book. I want to be able maybe to connect with you, social media places. Where is the best place for them to first find you and then to second find your books? If they're like, okay, I'm committed, I want to start right now.
Definitely to find me, Instagram is where I'm mostly roaming around, and for my books, Amazon. Most of my books, self-published books, are in Kindle Unlimited, but for my full list, my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for jumping on today. I had so much fun with you, and just again, I think this book was amazing, and I think the different layers that you had to this book, that we have the fake dating, the sports romance, but also there's serious topics too. I think anyone who wants to pick it up, they're absolutely going to love it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been so lovely speaking to you.
Yes, thank you. And for anyone who, again, maybe this is your first time, make sure you're staying up to date with everything that's happening here at Michaela's Book Nook. We will be back for more author interviews, book reviews, and more. And until next time, bye, everybody.